You think you want success, more money, more freedom, more recognition. You imagine the life, the lifestyle, the respect, the peace. But there's a truth no one tells you. A truth hidden behind highlight reels, luxury posts, and polished interviews. Success has a shadow, and most people only see it when it's too late. In this audiobook, The Dark Side of Success That Will Shock You, you're not just going to hear about winning. You're going to understand the price, the invisible cost, the emotional weight, the internal battles that come with reaching the top. Because success is not just about what you gain. It's also about what you lose. In this journey, you will discover why success can isolate you instead of connecting you, why the pursuit of more can quietly destroy your peace, why high achievement often comes with anxiety, pressure, and identity loss, why some of the most successful people feel empty, even after winning, and most importantly, how to pursue success without losing yourself in the process. This is not here to scare you. This is here to prepare you, because here's a line you need to remember from the very beginning. Success doesn't ruin people. It reveals who they become when nothing is missing. If that made you pause, stay with me, because what you're about to hear might change the way you chase everything. Chapter 1. The Dream That Blinds You. Before we talk about the dark side, we need to understand the illusion, because every journey toward success begins with a picture, a vision. You see the cars, the lifestyle, the freedom. You see someone successful, and you think they have it all. No stress, no struggle, no problems, just success. But what you're seeing is a highlight, not the full story. As reflected in the ideas from success is often imagined as perfect, but behind it, there are layers people don't show. Now think about this. Have you ever wished you could switch lives with someone successful? Just step into their world and escape your current reality? Most people have, because success looks like the solution to everything. Financial problems? Solved. Freedom? Achieved. Respect? Guaranteed. But here's the truth. Success solves certain problems and introduces new ones, and those new problems are often harder to talk about. Because once you make it, people expect you to be happy, grateful, fulfilled, complete. So when something feels off, you don't talk about it. You hide it. And that's where the darkness begins. Now let's go deeper. The dream of success is powerful because it gives you direction. It gives you motivation. It gives you something to chase. But it also creates a dangerous assumption that success will fix everything. And that assumption is where most people get blindsided. Because when you finally reach a level you once dreamed about and you realize something is still missing, it hits differently. Not because you failed, but because you succeeded and it wasn't what you expected. Let that sink in. The most confusing moment in life is not when you fail, but when you succeed and still feel empty. Now, this doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens more often than people admit, because success magnifies. It amplifies who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits. So if you chase success without understanding yourself, you don't escape your problems. You bring them with you, just at a higher level. Now let me ask you something. Why do you want success? Really, is it freedom, validation, security, escape? Be honest. Because your reason will determine your experience. If you chase success to prove something, you may never feel enough. If you chase success to escape something, that thing will follow you. If you chase success without clarity, You may arrive somewhere. That doesn't fulfill you, and that's the trap. Now here's something important. This audiobook is not about telling you to avoid success. It's about helping you understand it fully so you don't walk into it blindly. Because success is powerful. It can transform your life, but only if you're prepared for both sides of it, the light and the shadow. And in the next chapter, we're going to step into one of the first and most overlooked consequences of success, something that surprises almost everyone, something that slowly builds without you realizing it, loneliness, and why climbing higher often means standing alone. Dear friend, we are just starting to work on this channel, so your likes and subscriptions will greatly help us grow. Don't be indifferent. Thank you. Chapter 2. The loneliness no one warns you about. There is a moment that almost every successful person experiences, not at the beginning, not during the struggle, but somewhere in the middle of the climb, or right after reaching the top. It's quiet, subtle, but undeniable. You look around and realize there are fewer people beside you, not because you pushed them away intentionally, but because your path changed, your schedule changed, your priorities changed, your mindset changed, and slowly, your world became smaller, as highlighted in the patterns from success often demands time and focus, and over time, that cost can separate you from the very people you once shared life with. Now let's be honest. Success requires sacrifice. Late nights, missed events, canceled plans. You tell yourself, I'll make time later. I'll reconnect when things slow down. I just need to focus right now. But right now turns into months, then years. And one day, you realize the gap has grown. Conversations feel different. Connections feel distant. Relationships feel thinner. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped being present. Now here's where it gets deeper. It's not just about time. It's about transformation. As you grow, you think differently. You see things differently. Your goals change. Your standards rise. Your tolerance shifts. And suddenly, the conversations you used to enjoy don't feel the same. The environments you used to fit into don't feel aligned. And that creates distance. Not because you're better, but because you're different. And difference can feel like isolation. Let me ask you something. Now, have you ever felt alone in a room full of people? That feeling becomes more common as you grow, because growth separates, not always physically, but mentally, emotionally. You start thinking about things others don't. You start prioritizing things others don't. You start seeing life from a different perspective, and that creates a gap. Now here's the part no one talks about. Success doesn't just distance you from people, it makes it harder to trust new ones, because when you start achieving more, people start treating you differently. Some admire you, some envy you, some approach you with hidden intentions, and over time, you begin to question, do they like me or what I have? Are they here for me or for my position? Is this real or transactional? And that question changes how you connect. You become more guarded, more selective, more cautious, because you've seen what happens when trust is misplaced. And while that protects you, it also isolates you. Now let's take this even further. Loneliness at the top feels different than loneliness at the bottom. At the bottom, loneliness feels like lack. At the top, loneliness feels like silence. You have everything you once wanted, but no one who truly understands your reality, no one who relates to your pressure, no one who shares your mindset, no one who sees what you see. And that can feel heavy because success elevates your life, but it doesn't guarantee connection. Now, here's the truth you need to hear. The higher you climb, the fewer people can relate to your view. And that's not a bad thing, but it's something you need to prepare for, because if you don't, that loneliness can turn into something deeper, disconnection from others, and eventually from yourself. Now pause for a moment. Who are the people in your life that truly understand you, not just know you, understand you? Because those are the relationships you must protect, no matter how far you go. Now here's the shift. Success should not cost you your connections, but it often does when you don't manage it intentionally. So what can you do? You stay aware. You make time, even when it's inconvenient. You stay grounded, even when you rise. You value people, not just progress. Because at the end of the day, success without connection feels empty. And many people realize that only after they've lost it. Now let me ask you something. If you achieved everything you wanted, but had no one to share it with, would it still feel worth it? Think about that, because that question changes how you pursue success. And in the next chapter, we're going to step into something even more dangerous, something that doesn't just isolate you, but slowly changes who you are. Greed, not the obvious kind, but the subtle hunger that grows the more you achieve, and once it takes hold, it becomes very hard to control. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 3, The Hunger That Never Ends. At the beginning, success feels like enough. Your first win, your first breakthrough, your first moment of I made it. It feels powerful. You celebrate it. You feel proud. You feel fulfilled for a moment. Then something shifts, quietly, almost invisibly. That feeling fades, and in its place, a new thought appears. What's next? And that's where the hunger begins. Now let's be clear. Ambition is not the problem. Wanting more is not wrong. Growth requires desire. But there is a line between healthy ambition and endless craving, and most people don't realize when they cross it. As reflected in the ideas from Audiobook, success can slowly transform into a constant need for more money, more recognition, more validation, until nothing ever feels enough. Now think about this. How much is enough? Really? Because if you can't answer that question, you may never feel satisfied. You achieve one goal, and instead of enjoying it, you immediately move to the next. You reach one level, and instead of appreciating it, you compare it to a higher one. And slowly, success stops feeling like progress and starts feeling like pressure. Now here's the dangerous part. The more you achieve, the more your baseline shifts. What once felt like a dream becomes normal. What once felt like success becomes expected. And what once made you happy no longer moves you. That's adaptation. And it's powerful because it keeps you moving forward. But it also keeps you chasing. Now let's go deeper. This hunger can turn into greed. Not the obvious kind. Not the kind people talk about openly, but the internal kind. The quiet voice that says, it's not enough yet. You need more. You can't stop now. And the problem is, that voice never stops. Because there will always be someone ahead. Someone richer. Someone more successful. someone with more influence. And if your happiness is tied to being enough, you will always feel behind. Now here's the truth. If you don't define what enough means, you will chase forever, and that chase can consume you. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever achieved something and still felt unsatisfied? Not because it wasn't good, but because it didn't feel like you expected? That's the beginning of this cycle. Now imagine this. You reach your biggest goal, the one you've been chasing for years. You finally get there, and for a moment, it feels incredible. But then, your mind adjusts, and suddenly, it's just your new normal. That's the trap, because now, you need something bigger to feel the same way again. And that pattern repeats, over and over. Now here's where it gets dangerous. This hunger doesn't just affect your goals, it affects your character. Because when more becomes your only focus, you start making decisions differently. You prioritize results over relationships. You prioritize gain over values. You prioritize winning over being grounded. And slowly, you change, not all at once, but gradually, until one day, you look back and don't fully recognize who you've become. As highlighted in A, success without the right mindset can turn into arrogance, entitlement, and a loss of self-awareness, even for people who started with good intentions. Now pause for a moment. What are you chasing? And more importantly, why? Because your why determines whether your success builds you or consumes you. Now here's the shift. Instead of chasing endlessly, define your limits. Define what enough means for you, not based on others, not based on comparison, based on your values. Because once you define enough, you regain control. You stop chasing blindly. You start building intentionally. You start enjoying the process instead of being trapped by it. Now, here's something powerful. You can be ambitious without being consumed. You can grow without losing yourself. You can want more without needing everything. But that requires awareness and discipline, because the world will always push you to want more money, more status, more success. But you have to decide when it's enough. Now let me ask you something. If you got everything you wanted today, would you know how to enjoy it? Or would you immediately start chasing something else? Think about that, because that answer reveals everything. And in the next chapter, we're going to step into something even more intense, something that many successful people experience, but rarely admit. Anxiety, the pressure of maintaining success, the fear of losing it all, the constant weight of expectations. Because reaching the top is one thing, staying there is another game entirely. Chapter 4. The anxiety of having something to lose. At the beginning, you fear failure. You fear not making it. You fear being stuck. You fear falling behind. But something changes when you finally succeed. The fear doesn't disappear. It evolves, because now you have something to lose. Your position, your reputation, your lifestyle. And suddenly, the game feels different. Now it's not just about winning, it's about not losing. And that shift creates pressure, constant pressure, as reflected in many successful people develop anxiety not from the climb, but from the fear of losing everything they've built. Now let's go deeper. When you have nothing, you can take risks freely. You can experiment. You can fail. You can start over. But when you have something, every decision feels heavier. Every move feels important, because now there's something at stake, and that pressure doesn't turn off. It follows you into your work, into your thoughts, into your nights. You start asking yourself, what if I lose it all? What if this doesn't last? What if I can't keep up? And those questions don't leave easily. Now here's the part no one talks about. Success increases your standards, not just for yourself, but for your life. You get used to a certain level, a certain income, a certain lifestyle, a certain image, and once that becomes normal, the idea of losing it feels terrifying because it's not just about money, it's about identity. You've become someone, and the thought of going backwards feels like losing yourself. Now let me ask you something. Would you rather never reach success or reach it and constantly fear losing it? Because that's the reality many people face. Now here's where anxiety begins to take control. You start overthinking. Every decision feels critical. Every mistake feels dangerous. Every risk feels amplified. And instead of moving freely, you move cautiously. Not because you want to, but because you're trying to protect what you've built. Now here's the truth. The higher you rise, the greater the pressure to stay there, and that pressure can become overwhelming. Now let's talk about something even deeper. The fear of losing success often leads to overworking. You push harder, you work longer, you stay constantly active because in your mind, stopping feels risky, rest feels dangerous, slowing down feels like falling behind. So you keep going relentlessly. But here's the problem. That pace is not sustainable. And over time, it leads to burnout, exhaustion, mental fatigue, emotional strain. And yet, you keep pushing because you're afraid of what happens if you stop. As highlighted in many high achievers push themselves to extremes, often sacrificing their well-being in the process. Now pause for a moment. When was the last time you truly felt at peace? Not distracted, not busy, not occupied, peaceful. Because success doesn't guarantee that feeling, and for many people, it makes it harder to find. Now here's the shift. You must separate your identity from your success. Because if your identity is tied to what you have, you will always fear losing it. But if your identity is grounded in who you are, you become stable no matter what happens. Now imagine this. You succeed, but you're not controlled by it. You grow, but you're not defined by it. You achieve, but you're still at peace. That's the goal. Not just success, but stability. Now, here's the truth you need to remember. Success without peace is just pressure in disguise. And most people realize that too late. Now, let me ask you something. If success cost you your peace, would it still feel worth it? Think about that, because that question will shape how you pursue everything. And in the next chapter, we're going to step into another hidden consequence, something that comes not from within, but from others. Envy, the way people react to your success, the way it changes your relationships, the way it creates tension you didn't expect, because not everyone celebrates your growth. And once you experience that, it changes how you see people forever. Chapter 5. The Weight of Other People's Eyes. At the beginning, nobody is watching. You move quietly. You build silently. You fail without an audience. And in that space, there is freedom. Freedom to experiment. Freedom to make mistakes. Freedom to grow without pressure. But something changes when you start succeeding. People begin to notice. At first, it feels good. Recognition, attention, validation. You feel seen, appreciated, acknowledged. But over time, that attention changes. because not everyone sees your success the same way. As reflected in, success doesn't just bring admiration, it also brings envy, criticism, and hidden resentment. Now let's go deeper. When people see you rising, they don't always see your journey. They don't see the late nights, the sacrifices, the discipline. They see the result. And sometimes that result triggers something in them: comparison, insecurity, doubt, and those emotions can turn into envy. Now here's the truth. Your success can become a mirror that reflects other people's insecurities. And not everyone handles that well. Some people will celebrate you genuinely. They will support you, encourage you, be proud of you, but others will react differently. They may question your success, downplay your effort, or suggest you got lucky. Not because it's true, but because it protects their own perspective. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes that reaction comes from people close to you, friends, colleagues, even family. People who once supported you start acting differently. Subtle comments, backhanded compliments, distance, and you feel it. You don't always talk about it, but you notice it, and that realization changes something inside you. Because now, success doesn't just feel like growth, it feels like separation. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever shared good news and felt like the reaction wasn't what you expected? Not excitement, not support, but something off. That's what this feels like. Now here's the deeper layer. Envy doesn't always show itself openly. It can hide behind politeness, behind silence, behind subtle distance, and that makes it harder to navigate. Because you're not sure. Is this real? Am I overthinking? Did something change? And that uncertainty creates tension. Now here's something important. This is not about blaming others. It's about understanding reality. Because your growth will not always be comfortable for everyone around you. And that's okay. But you need to be prepared for it. Because if you're not, it can affect you. You may start holding back, downplaying your success, avoiding sharing your wins, not because you're not proud, but because you don't want to create tension. And that is where you start shrinking. Now here's the truth you need to hear. If you dim your light to make others comfortable, you limit your own growth. But at the same time, you must stay grounded. Because success can also change how you see others. You may start comparing, judging, distancing yourself, and that's another trap. Because now, you're not just experiencing envy, you're becoming disconnected. As highlighted in, success can distort relationships, making it harder to build genuine connections when trust becomes uncertain. Now pause for a moment. Who in your life truly celebrates your growth? Not tolerates it, celebrates it. Because those people are rare, and they matter more than anything. Now here's the shift. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to support you, but you do need to stay true to yourself. Because your success is your journey, not theirs. And how they react says more about them than it does about you. Now let me ask you something. Are you prepared for how people might change when you succeed? Because that change is part of the journey. And if you're not aware of it, it can catch you off guard. But here's where it gets even deeper. Because envy doesn't just come from others. It can grow inside you too. Comparison, jealousy, the constant feeling that someone else is ahead. And once that starts, it can consume your peace. In the next chapter, we're going to explore that internal battle the jealousy that success creates, even when you're already winning, and why, no matter how far you go, there will always be someone ahead. If you have watched the video up to this point, please write in the comments which country you are from. It is very interesting to see which corners of the world our viewers come from. Chapter 6. The Comparison Trap That Never Ends. You reach a level you once dreamed about. You achieve something that once felt impossible. And for a moment, you feel proud, satisfied, accomplished. But then you look around and you see someone else, someone ahead, more successful, more recognized, more accomplished, and suddenly that feeling disappears, replaced by something else. Comparison. Now let's be honest. Comparison is natural. It's how we measure progress. It's how we understand where we stand. But when it becomes constant, it becomes toxic. Because no matter how far you go, there will always be someone ahead. And if your happiness is tied to being on top, you will never feel like you've arrived. As reflected in even successful people can feel jealousy toward others who are further ahead, creating a cycle where satisfaction is always just out of reach. Now let's go deeper. At the beginning, you compare upward. You look at people ahead of you for inspiration, and that can be healthy. It pushes you, it motivates you, it expands your vision. But something changes when comparison becomes identity, when you stop asking, what can I learn from them, and start asking, why am I not there yet? That shift is where jealousy begins. Now here's the dangerous part. Jealousy doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like quiet dissatisfaction, a subtle feeling that what you have is not enough, even when it is. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever achieved something significant only to feel less proud after seeing someone else do more? That's comparison, and it can erase progress in seconds. Now here's the truth. Comparison turns achievement into inadequacy, and if you don't control it, it will control you. Now let's go even deeper. Comparison doesn't just affect how you see others, it affects how you see yourself. You start measuring your worth against external standards, money, status, recognition, and that's where things become unstable, because those standards are always changing, always rising, always moving. So no matter how much you achieve, you feel like you're behind. Now here's where it becomes dangerous. This mindset can turn you against others. Instead of celebrating their success, you resent it. Instead of learning from them, you compete with them. Instead of feeling inspired, you feel threatened. And slowly, your mindset shifts from growth to rivalry, from progress to pressure. As highlighted in when success becomes a competition, people start seeing others as threats rather than allies. And that mindset can destroy both relationships and peace of mind. Now pause for a moment. Who are you comparing yourself to? And why? Because that answer reveals what's driving you. Now here's the shift. Comparison is not the problem. Uncontrolled comparison is, because you can use it or be used by it. You can let it inspire you or let it consume you. The difference is awareness. Now imagine this. You see someone ahead of you. Instead of feeling behind, you feel curious. What did they do? What can I learn? How can I grow? That's healthy comparison. It moves you forward. But if you see someone ahead and feel smaller, that's destructive comparison. It pulls you back. Now, here's something powerful. The wealthy who stay grounded don't measure their success by others. They measure it by progress, by growth, by alignment with their own values. Because once you define success internally, external comparison loses power. Now let me ask you something. If no one else existed, how would you measure your success? Think about that, because that answer is your truth. Now here's the reality you need to accept. There will always be someone ahead, and that's okay, because your journey is not theirs. Your path is not theirs. Your timeline is not theirs. And once you understand that, you regain control. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Comparison steals your peace when you forget your own path. So stay focused, stay grounded, stay aware, because your success is not a competition. It's a journey. Now let's take this even deeper. Because comparison doesn't just affect your mindset, it can affect your identity. Who you think you are, what you believe you're worth, how you define yourself. And in the next chapter, we're going to explore something even more unsettling. Identity loss, the moment when success changes you so much, you no longer recognize who you used to be. And sometimes, you don't even recognize who you've become. Chapter 7. The identity you slowly lose at the beginning. You know exactly who you are. Your values are clear. Your habits are familiar. Your personality is grounded. You have your way of thinking, your way of speaking, your way of living. And then, success begins to change things. Not all at once, but gradually, quietly, almost invisibly. And one day, you pause and realize something feels different. You're not reacting the same. You're not thinking the same. You're not even feeling the same. And the question appears, am I still the same person? Now here's the truth. Success doesn't just change your life. It changes you. And if you're not aware of it, that change can go too far. As reflected in us, many people lose touch with their values, priorities, and even their personality as they rise, not intentionally, but as a consequence of their new environment and lifestyle. Now let's go deeper. When your circumstances change, your environment changes. You move differently. You meet different people. You experience different things. And those experiences shape you. That's natural. Growth requires evolution. But here's where it becomes dangerous. When you adapt too much, you disconnect from your roots, from who you were, from what grounded you, and slowly you become someone new, but not always someone better. Sometimes, just someone different. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who changed after they became successful? Their attitude, their tone, their energy, something felt off. That's what identity shift looks like from the outside. Now imagine it from the inside. You don't wake up and decide, I'm going to change. It happens through small adjustments. You start thinking differently, speaking differently, prioritizing differently. And over time, those changes compound. Now here's the deeper layer. Success introduces you to new standards, new lifestyles, new expectations, new pressures. And to fit into that world, you adapt. But in that process, you may lose parts of yourself, your humility, your simplicity, your authenticity. Not because you want to, but because you're adjusting. Now here's where it gets even more complex. Sometimes you don't even notice the change until someone points it out. You're not the same anymore. And in that moment, you feel it because deep down, you know it's true. Now here's the truth you need to hear. Growth should evolve you, not erase you. But many people cross that line. Now let's talk about why this happens. Success brings exposure. more people, more opinions, more expectations. And with that exposure comes pressure to act a certain way, to present yourself a certain way, to maintain a certain image. And slowly, you start performing instead of being. You adjust your behavior. You filter your words. You manage your image. And over time, that performance becomes your identity. Now here's the problem. When your identity becomes performance, you lose authenticity. And without authenticity, you lose connection, not just with others, but with yourself. Now pause for a moment. Who are you when no one is watching? Not the version you show, not the version you project, the real version, because that's the version you must protect, no matter how successful you become. Now here's the shift. You don't need to stay the same. Growth requires change, but you must stay grounded, connected to your values, connected to your truth, connected to your identity. Because success without identity creates confusion. Now imagine this. You achieve everything you wanted, but you don't feel like yourself anymore. Would that feel like success or loss? Think about that, because many people reach that point and don't know how to come back. Now here's something powerful. You can evolve without losing yourself. You can grow without becoming someone you don't recognize. But that requires awareness, constant awareness, checking in with yourself, asking, is this still me? Is this aligned with who I want to be? Am I growing or drifting? Because without those questions, you can drift far. Now here's the truth you need to remember. The most dangerous part of success is becoming someone you don't respect. And once that happens, no achievement feels fulfilling. Now let me ask you something. Who do you want to become as you succeed? Not just what you want to have, who you want to be. Because that answer will guide everything. And in the next chapter, we're going to explore something even more intense, something that affects both your mind and your body. The physical cost of success, the exhaustion, the burnout, the silent damage that builds over time. Because success is not just a mental journey, it's a physical one, and if you ignore that, your body will eventually force you to pay attention. If you appreciate our efforts and our thoughts, subscribe and like this video. We need to show the world that there are many people like us. We must always continue to improve. Chapter 8. The body that pays the price. Success is often described as a mental game. Discipline, focus, strategy. But there's a truth most people ignore. Your body is part of the journey. And if you neglect it, it will eventually force you to stop. Now, let's be real. The road to success is demanding. Long hours, late nights, constant pressure. You push yourself. You sacrifice sleep. You ignore fatigue. You override signals. Because in your mind, there's always something more important. Another goal, another task, another level. And at first, it feels manageable. You tell yourself, I'll rest later. I'll recover after this. Just one more push. But that one more push never really ends. As highlighted in Taz, success often comes with physical consequences. Insomnia, stress, exhaustion, things that slowly build beneath the surface. Now let's go deeper. Your body keeps score. Every hour you skip rest, every moment of stress, every time you ignore your limits, it adds up. And the problem is, you don't feel it immediately. It builds quietly. Until one day, it doesn't. Fatigue becomes constant. Sleep becomes difficult. Energy becomes unstable. And suddenly, your performance drops. Now here's the paradox. You push your body to achieve success. But if you push too far, your body limits your success. Now let me ask you something. How often do you ignore your physical signals? Tired, but keep going. Stressed, but push harder. Exhausted, but refuse to stop. Because that pattern is common and dangerous. Now here's the truth. Your body is not a machine. It's a system that needs balance. And without that balance, everything starts to break. Now let's talk about something deeper. Stress. Not the short-term kind, the constant kind. The kind that doesn't turn off. Because when you're successful, there's always something to manage. Deadlines, expectations, responsibilities, and that pressure becomes your baseline. Now here's where it gets serious. Chronic stress affects everything. Your sleep, your focus, your health. It weakens your system, slowly, quietly, until you feel it, and by then, it's harder to recover. Now imagine this. You achieve everything you wanted, but your body can't enjoy it. You're tired. You're drained. You're running on empty. Would that feel like success or survival? Now here's something important. Burnout doesn't happen suddenly. It builds through repetition, through neglect, through ignoring your limits. And most people don't see it coming because they're too focused on the goal. Now here's the shift. You must treat your body as part of your strategy, not separate from it, because your energy is your greatest asset. Without it, nothing works. Now imagine this. You wake up energized, focused, clear, your mind sharp, your body strong. How different would your day feel? How much more effective would you be? That's not luxury, that's foundation. Now let's make this practical. Sleep is not optional. Recovery is not weakness. Rest is not wasted time. It's investment. Because when you take care of your body, it takes care of your performance. Now, here's the truth you need to remember. You can't build a powerful life on a broken body. And many people learn that too late. Now pause for a moment. What is your body trying to tell you right now? Fatigue? Stress? Tension? Because those signals matter, and ignoring them has a cost. Now here's something powerful. You don't need to slow down your ambition. You need to support it with energy, with recovery, with balance. Because sustainable success requires sustainability. Now let me ask you something. Are you building success or sacrificing yourself for it? Because there's a difference, and that difference determines your future. But there's one more layer. Because even if you manage your body, even if you avoid burnout, there is something deeper that can affect you, something internal, something emotional. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about emptiness, the feeling that appears even when everything looks perfect. Because sometimes the hardest part of success is realizing that what you thought would fulfill you doesn't. Chapter 9. The emptiness. No one prepares you for you. Finally, get there. The goal, the level, the version of life you once dreamed about. Everything looks right. From the outside, it's perfect. The money is there, the lifestyle is there, the recognition is there. You've done it. You've become successful. And for a moment, you feel it. Pride, relief, satisfaction. But then something unexpected happens. It fades, not all at once, but slowly and in its place. A strange feeling appears, not failure, not sadness, but emptiness. Now let's be honest. This is the part no one talks about, because it doesn't fit the narrative. Success is supposed to feel fulfilling, complete, final, but sometimes it doesn't. And that realization can be confusing, even unsettling, because You start asking yourself, why don't I feel how I thought I would? Why does this feel incomplete? Why am I still searching even after I've arrived? Now here's the truth. Success gives you what you wanted, but not always what you needed. Let that sink in. Because this is where many people get lost. They spend years chasing a vision, only to realize the vision wasn't the answer. Now let's go deeper. At the beginning, success represents something more than itself. Freedom, validation, escape. You believe, when I reach this level, I'll finally feel at peace. When I get this, everything will make sense. When I achieve this, I'll feel complete. But here's what happens. You reach the goal and realize those feelings didn't come with it because they were never attached to it. Now here's where it gets even more complex. The chase gave you purpose. It gave you direction. It gave you motivation. It gave you something to wake up for. But once you achieve the goal, that chase disappears. And without it, you feel a gap. Because now, you don't know what you're moving toward. And that lack of direction creates emptiness. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever worked towards something for so long that once you achieved it, you didn't know what to do next? That feeling is what we're talking about. Now here's the deeper layer. Success can fulfill external needs, but not internal ones. It can give you money, but not meaning. It can give you status, but not identity. It can give you recognition, but not connection. And if you rely on success to fill internal gaps, you will always feel something missing. Now here's the truth you need to hear. You cannot build inner fulfillment with external achievements, and many people spend years learning that the hard way. Now pause for a moment. What are you really chasing? Not the surface answer, the deeper one. Is it approval, validation, a sense of worth? Because if that's the case, no level of success will fully satisfy it. Now here's something powerful. Emptiness is not failure. It's feedback. It's telling you there's more to this. There's something deeper. There's something missing that success alone cannot provide. And that realization is a turning point, because now you stop chasing blindly and start searching intentionally. Now imagine this. You succeed, but you also feel fulfilled, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. That's the shift. From external success to internal alignment. Now here's where it becomes real. You must define success beyond achievement, beyond money, beyond status. You must include peace, meaning, connection. Because without those, success feels empty. Now let me ask you something. If everything you built disappeared tomorrow, what would still remain? Your character, your values, your identity? Because that's your foundation. And without it, success has nothing to stand on. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Success without meaning feels like winning a game you don't care about. And many people realize that too late. Now here's the shift. You don't need to stop chasing success. You need to expand your definition of it. Include fulfillment, include balance, include purpose. Because when those align, success feels different. Now pause for a moment. What actually fulfills you not impresses others, not looks good, fulfills you, because that answer is more important than any goal. Now let's go deeper, because even when you find meaning, even when you redefine success, there is still something that can quietly affect you, something internal, something that shapes your decisions in ways you don't expect. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about pressure, not external pressure, internal pressure, the expectations you place on yourself once you've proven you can succeed, and why that pressure can become heavier than failure itself. Dear viewer, we strive to create high-quality videos for you. Please assist us in improving our efforts by commenting on what you like about the video and what you would change or add. We would be very grateful. Chapter 10. The pressure you create for yourself. At the beginning, you're just trying to make it. You set goals. You push forward. You take risks. And every small win feels like progress. But something changes when you prove to yourself that you can succeed. Because now, the expectations rise not from others, from you. Now you don't just want to win, you expect to win every time. And that expectation creates pressure, internal pressure, the kind no one sees, the kind no one talks about, but the kind that can break you if you don't understand it. Now let's be honest. There's a moment after success where your mindset shifts from, I hope I can do this, to, I have to do this again and again and again, because now you've set a standard, and falling below that standard feels like failure, even if it's not. Now here's the truth. Once you prove you can win, you stop fearing failure and start fearing inconsistency. Let that sink in, because this is where pressure becomes personal. Now, it's not about others judging you. It's about you judging yourself. Now let's go deeper. You start thinking, I can't slow down. I can't drop my level. I can't lose momentum. Because in your mind, consistency equals identity. If you keep winning, you are successful. If you don't, you start questioning everything. Now here's where it becomes dangerous. This pressure doesn't turn off. It follows you into your work, into your thoughts, into your rest. Even when you're not working, you're thinking about working. Even when you're resting, you feel like you should be doing more, because your mind is always evaluating, always measuring, always pushing. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you allowed yourself to just be, not perform, not produce, not achieve, just exist? For many people chasing success, that moment is rare, because internal pressure doesn't allow it. Now here's the deeper layer. This pressure can make you lose enjoyment. The things you once loved start feeling like obligations. The passion you once had starts feeling like responsibility, because now it's not just something you do. It's something you must maintain. And that shift changes everything. Now here's the truth you need to hear. When success becomes expectation, joy can turn into pressure, and that pressure can drain you slowly. Now let's take it even further. You start setting higher standards, higher goals, higher expectations, and while that drives growth, it also creates tension, because no matter how much you achieve, you raise the bar again, and again, and again, so you never feel like you've done enough. Now pause for a moment. Do you allow yourself to feel satisfied, or do you immediately move to the next goal? Because that pattern determines your experience. Now here's something powerful. Pressure is not the problem. Unmanaged pressure is, because pressure can push you forward or break you down. The difference is how you handle it. Now imagine this. You still strive for excellence. You still push yourself, but you also allow yourself to breathe, to pause, to enjoy, to reflect. That's balance, and without it, pressure becomes overwhelming. Now let's talk about identity again, because internal pressure is often tied to identity. You don't just want to succeed, you want to remain the person who succeeds. And that creates fear. Fear of slipping, fear of slowing down, fear of losing that identity. But here's the truth. You are not your results. You are the person creating them. And once you understand that, the pressure changes. Now, you don't have to prove yourself constantly. You just have to continue being who you are. Now, let me ask you something. Who are you without your achievements? Take a moment, because that answer is your foundation. And if your foundation is strong, pressure loses its power. Now, here's the shift. Stop tying your worth to your output, because output fluctuates, results change, but your value should remain stable. Now, here's something important. You can pursue greatness without being crushed by it. You can aim high without losing your peace, but that requires awareness, constant awareness, checking in with yourself, asking, am I pushing or am I forcing? Am I growing or am I draining myself? Am I aligned or am I chasing endlessly? Because those questions keep you grounded. Now, here's the truth you need to remember. Pressure builds greatness, but only when it doesn't destroy you first. So manage it, respect it, control it, because if you don't, it will control you. Now let's go deeper. Because even if you manage pressure, even if you stay balanced, there is something else that can quietly affect you, something subtle, something emotional. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about trust, the difficulty of knowing who is real, when success changes how people approach you, because not everyone around you is there for the right reasons. And once you experience that, it changes how you see relationships forever. Chapter 11. The trust that becomes fragile. At the beginning, trust is simple. You connect with people naturally. You believe what they say. You don't question their intentions. Relationships feel real, effortless, genuine, but something changes as you rise, as your success becomes visible. Your value increases, not just in your eyes, but in the eyes of others. And that's where things begin to shift, because now people don't just see you, they see what you represent. Opportunity, access, influence, and that changes how they approach you. As reflected in success can attract people who are more interested in what you have than who you are, making genuine relationships harder to identify. Now let's go deeper. At first, it's subtle. More people reaching out, more interest, more attention, and it feels good. You feel valued, respected, important. But over time, you start noticing patterns, conversations with hidden intentions, interactions that feel transactional, people who show up only when you can offer something. And that realization changes everything. Now let me ask you something. How do you know if someone values you or what you can provide? That question becomes more important the higher you go. Now here's the truth. Success doesn't just attract people, it tests their intentions. And not everyone passes that test. Now, here's where it becomes difficult. You start becoming more cautious, more selective, more guarded, because you've seen what happens when trust is misplaced. You've experienced disappointment. You've seen hidden motives. You've felt the shift in people's behavior, so you adapt. You protect yourself. But in doing so, you create distance. Now this is the paradox. To avoid being used, you limit connection. But in limiting connection, you risk isolation. Now here's the deeper layer. It's not just about others. It's about you. Because when trust becomes fragile, you start questioning everything. Why are they here? What do they want? Can I trust this? And that constant questioning creates mental tension. Now, relationships require effort, energy, evaluation. Instead of feeling natural, they feel calculated. Now pause for a moment. When was the last time you felt a connection? Without questioning it, without analyzing it, without doubting it, that feeling becomes rare when trust is damaged. Now, here's something important. Not everyone has bad intentions. There are still genuine people. People who support you for who you are, not what you have. But finding them requires awareness and patience. Because success creates noise. And within that noise, you must learn to identify what's real. Now here's the truth you need to hear. The more valuable you become, the more valuable trust becomes, and protecting it becomes essential. Now let's talk about something deeper, self-trust. Because as external trust becomes uncertain, internal trust becomes critical. Do you trust your judgment? Do you trust your instincts? Do you trust your decisions? Because if you don't, everything feels unstable. Now imagine this. You are surrounded by people, but unsure of their intentions. You are successful, but cautious in your relationships. You are connected, but still feel alone. That's the emotional complexity of success. Now here's the shift. You don't need to trust everyone, but you need to stay open, not naive, not careless, but open. Because if you close yourself completely, you lose something important, connection. And without connection, success feels empty. Now let me ask you something. Who in your life can you trust without hesitation? Not because they benefit from you, but because they care about you, because those people are your foundation, and they matter more than any achievement. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Success will test your relationships, but it will also reveal who truly belongs in your life. So pay attention to actions, to consistency, to intention, because not everyone who walks with you is walking with you for the right reasons. And once you understand that, you move differently, not colder, but wiser. Now let's go even deeper, because trust is not the only thing that becomes complicated. There is something else, something internal, something that affects how you see the world. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about paranoia, the constant sense that something could go wrong, that someone could take what you've built, that everything could disappear. Because when you have something valuable, you start protecting it, and sometimes that protection turns into fear. Chapter 12, the fear that becomes paranoia. At the beginning, you have nothing to protect, no reputation, no status, no major loss to fear. You move freely, you take risks, you try things, you fail, and recover. But something changes when you build something valuable, because now you have something to lose, and that changes how you think. Now your mind doesn't just focus on growth. It focuses on protection, on security, on control, and slowly that awareness can turn into something else. Paranoia. Now let's be clear, not extreme paranoia, not the kind you see in movies, but a subtle, constant tension, a feeling that something could go wrong at any moment, as reflected in many successful individuals begin to fear losing what they've built. And that fear can lead to overprotection, stress, and unhealthy decisions. Now let's go deeper. You start thinking, what if this fails? What if someone takes advantage of me? What if everything collapses? And those thoughts don't just pass. They linger, they repeat, they grow. Now here's the truth. The more you have, the more you feel you have to protect. And protection can become obsession. Now let me ask you something. Do you feel more at ease when you have nothing to lose or when you have everything to protect? Because most people assume success brings peace, but in reality, it often brings vigilance, constant awareness, constant monitoring, constant thinking. Now here's where it becomes dangerous. You start overanalyzing every situation, every person, every decision. You question motives. You anticipate threats. You prepare for worst-case scenarios, and while some of that is necessary, too much of it creates anxiety. Now, here's the deeper layer. Paranoia doesn't just affect your thoughts, it affects your behavior. You become more guarded, more defensive, more controlled. You trust less, you relax less, you enjoy less, because your mind is always on alert. Now imagine this. You've built everything you wanted, but instead of feeling free, you feel responsible for maintaining it, protecting it, securing it at all times. Would that feel like success or pressure? Now here's something important. Awareness is not the problem. Being prepared is not the problem. But living in constant fear is, because fear limits you. It restricts your thinking. It restricts your actions. It restricts your growth. Now here's the truth you need to hear. Protection without trust turns success into a cage, and many people don't realize they're trapped. Now let's talk about something deeper. Control. Because paranoia often leads to control. You want to control outcomes, control people, control situations, because control feels safe. But here's the problem. You can't control everything, and trying to exhausts you. Now pause for a moment. How much of your energy is spent trying to control things that are outside your control? Because that energy could be used to build, to grow, to live, but instead it's used to protect. Now here's the shift. You must balance awareness with trust. Trust in your ability, trust in your decisions, trust in your resilience. Because even if things go wrong, you can rebuild. Now imagine this. You succeed, but you're not afraid of losing it because you trust yourself to create it again. That's power. That's freedom. Now, here's the truth you need to remember. Real security is not what you have. It's what you can rebuild. And once you understand that, fear loses its grip. Now let me ask you something. If everything you built disappeared, would you trust yourself to build it again? Because that answer defines your confidence. Now here's something powerful. The most stable people are not the ones who hold tightly. They're the ones who trust their ability to recover, to adapt, to rebuild, to grow again. And that mindset changes everything. Now let's go deeper. Because paranoia is not the only emotional shift. There is something else. Something that affects how you experience life itself. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about numbness, the moment when success becomes normal, and the things that once excited you no longer feel the same. Because sometimes the biggest loss in success is not what you lose externally, but what you stop feeling internally. Chapter 13, the numbness that replaces excitement. At the beginning, everything feels exciting. Your first progress, your first win, your first sign that things are changing. You feel it deeply, the energy, the motivation, the sense that something is happening. Every step forward feels meaningful, but something changes. as you continue, as you achieve more, as you experience more, as success becomes familiar, the things that once excited you start to feel normal, and slowly that excitement fades. Now here's the truth. What once felt like a dream eventually becomes your baseline. And when that happens, your emotional response changes. Now let's go deeper. At the beginning, small wins feel big. A new opportunity, a small achievement, a step forward. You celebrate it, you feel it, but over time, your standards rise, and those same wins no longer feel the same. Now they feel expected, routine, normal, and that shift creates numbness, not because you don't care, but because you've adapted. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever achieved something that would have made your past self proud, but your current self barely reacted? That's what we're talking about. Now here's where it gets deeper. Success increases your exposure to experiences, to opportunities, to rewards. And the more you experience, the harder it becomes to feel the same level of excitement because your mind adapts, it recalibrates, it raises the baseline. Now here's a problem. If your happiness depends on excitement, you will constantly need more achievement, more success, more stimulation, and that creates a cycle because no matter how much you achieve, the feeling fades. Now here's the truth you need to hear. Chasing constant excitement leads to emotional exhaustion because you're always trying to feel something that naturally decreases over time. Now, let's go even deeper. Numbness doesn't just affect excitement, it affects gratitude. Because when something becomes normal, you stop appreciating it, you stop noticing it, you stop feeling it, and that's dangerous because you can have everything and still feel like you have nothing. Now imagine this. You are living a life you once dreamed about, but it feels ordinary, not because it is, but because you've adapted to it. Would that feel like success or emptiness? Now here's something important. This is not a flaw. It's human nature. Adaptation is how we survive, but it's also how we lose perspective. Now here's the shift. You must actively practice awareness, gratitude, reflection, because without it, you forget how far you've come. You forget what you've built. You forget what once meant everything to you. Now pause for a moment. What do you have right now that you once wished for? Take a second, because that realization brings back perspective. Now, here's something powerful. You don't need more to feel more. You need awareness, because awareness reconnects you to what you already have. Now let's take it further. Numbness can also affect your drive, because if nothing feels exciting, nothing feels urgent. And if nothing feels urgent, you lose momentum. Now you're not driven by passion, you're driven by habit. And while that can maintain progress, it doesn't feel the same. Now here's the truth. Success without emotional connection feels like routine, and routine without meaning feels empty. Now imagine this. You are successful, but you don't feel excited. You don't feel inspired. You don't feel driven. You just operate. Would that feel fulfilling or mechanical? Now here's the key. You must reconnect with why you started, not the goals, the feeling, the purpose, because purpose restores emotion. Now let me ask you something. Why did you start your journey? Not what you wanted. Why you wanted it. Because that reason is your anchor, and without it, you drift. Now here's something important. You don't need constant excitement. You need meaningful engagement, connection to what you're doing, connection to why you're doing it, because meaning outlasts excitement. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Excitement fades, but meaning sustains. So don't chase feelings, build purpose, because purpose keeps you alive inside. Now let's go deeper, because numbness is not the final stage. There is something else, something even more subtle, something that happens when success becomes your identity. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about dependence, the moment when your sense of self becomes tied to your success, and what happens when that success is threatened, because that's where things become truly unstable. Chapter 14, when your identity becomes your success. There comes a point where success is no longer something you do. It becomes something you are. You're not just someone who achieved something. You are the achiever, the performer, the successful one. And at first, that feels powerful, because now you have an identity, a role, a version of yourself that the world recognizes. But here's where it gets dangerous. When your identity becomes tied to your success, you become dependent on it. Now, let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with being proud of what you've built. There's nothing wrong with identifying with your progress. But when your entire sense of self depends on your success, you create instability, because success is not guaranteed. It fluctuates, it evolves, it changes. And if your identity is attached to it, so do you. Now here's the truth. If you become your success, you risk losing yourself when it changes. Let that sink in, because this is where many people struggle. Now let's go deeper. At the beginning, you separate who you are from what you do. You're building something, working toward something, growing into something. But over time, as results come, that separation disappears. Now people see you as your success. And eventually, you see yourself that way too. Now, here's where it becomes complicated, because once you identify as successful, you feel pressure to maintain that identity. You feel like you have to live up to it every day, every decision, every action. Now let me ask you something. What happens if you fail? Not small failure, real failure, loss, setback, collapse. If your identity is built on success, that moment doesn't just affect your results, it affects you. Now it's not just, I lost something. It becomes, I am not who I thought I was. And that is where identity cracks. Now, here's the deeper layer. When your identity depends on success, you start avoiding failure at all costs. You become more cautious, more controlled, more resistant to risk, because failure feels like a threat to who you are, not just what you do. And that fear limits growth. Now here's the truth you need to hear. The moment success defines you, failure starts to control you, and that's a dangerous place to be. Now let's take it further. This dependence can also affect your confidence, because your confidence becomes conditional. When things are going well, you feel strong. When things slow down, you feel uncertain. When things go wrong, you feel lost, because your sense of self is tied to outcomes. Now pause for a moment. Who are you without your achievements? Not your titles, not your results, just you. Because that answer determines your stability. Now here's something powerful. The most grounded people, separate identity from results, they know, I create success, but I am not my success. And that distinction gives them freedom, because now they can win without attachment and lose without collapse. Now imagine this. You succeed, but you remain the same person. grounded, stable, aware. Your identity doesn't rise and fall with your results. It stays consistent. That's strength. Now let's go deeper. When you detach identity from success, you unlock something powerful, resilience. Because now, failure doesn't define you. It informs you, it teaches you, it shapes you, but it doesn't break you. Now here's the shift. Instead of building your identity on what you achieve, build it on who you are becoming, your discipline, your values, your mindset, because those things don't disappear. Now let me ask you something. What do you stand for outside of your success? What defines you beyond your results? Because that foundation is what keeps you stable. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Success should be something you experience, not something you become. Because when you become it, you lose flexibility. You lose freedom. You lose yourself. Now pause for a moment. If everything you built disappeared, would you still feel like yourself? Or would you feel lost? Because that answer reveals your dependence. Now here's something important. You can be successful without being defined by it. You can achieve without attaching your identity. But that requires awareness and discipline, because the world will constantly try to define you by your results. But you must define yourself. Now, let's go deeper, because identity is not the final layer. There is something even more subtle, something that affects how you relate to time itself. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about time distortion, how success changes your perception of time, your priorities, and your sense of urgency. Because once you start operating at a higher level, time feels different, and if you don't manage it, it can quietly take control of your life. Chapter 15. When time starts controlling you. At the beginning, time feels slow. You're waiting, working, building. Days feel long. Progress feels distant. The future feels far away. You think, one day, I'll get there. One day, things will change. One day, I'll have control. But something shifts when success begins to accelerate your life. Time starts moving differently, faster, more compressed, more demanding, and suddenly, you're not waiting anymore. You're running. Now here's the truth. Success doesn't give you more time. It gives you more to do within the same time. Let that sink in, because this is where things begin to feel overwhelming. Now, let's go deeper. As you grow, your responsibilities increase. More decisions, more opportunities, more expectations, and each of those requires time. But time doesn't expand. It stays the same. 24 hours, no matter how successful you become. Now here's where the distortion begins. You start trying to fit more into less. You stack your days. You compress your schedule. You fill every gap. Because there's always something important, something urgent, something that can't wait. And over time, your life becomes packed, not just physically, mentally. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you had nothing to do? No schedule, no obligation, no urgency, just space. For many people chasing success, that space disappears because time becomes a resource to maximize, not experience. Now here's the deeper layer. When time becomes transactional, life becomes mechanical. You stop experiencing moments. You start managing them. Every hour has a purpose. Every minute has a task. And while that increases productivity, it reduces presence. Now here's the truth you need to hear. When you optimize every moment, you risk losing the meaning of those moments because life is not just about output, it's about experience. Now let's take it further. Time pressure creates urgency, and urgency can become constant. You feel like you're always behind, always catching up, always moving, even when you're ahead. Now here's the paradox. The more you achieve, the more it feels like there's no time, because your world expands, your goals grow, your opportunities multiply, and suddenly time feels smaller. Now pause for a moment. Are you controlling your time, or is your time controlling you? Because that answer defines your experience. Now, here's something important. Time management is not just about productivity, it's about alignment. What you choose to spend your time on shapes your life. Now imagine this. You're successful, but your time is fully occupied. No space, no freedom, no flexibility. Would that feel like success or limitation? Because time is the ultimate currency, and once it's spent, you don't get it back. Now here's the shift. You must protect your time, not just from others, but from yourself, from overcommitment, from constant urgency, from unnecessary complexity, because more is not always better. Now let's go deeper. The wealthy who stay balanced don't just manage time, they design it. They choose what matters. They eliminate what doesn't. They create space intentionally, because space is where clarity lives, where peace exists, where life is experienced. Now here's the truth you need to remember. If you don't control your time, your success will consume it. And once it's consumed, it's gone. Now, let me ask you something. What are you trading your time for? Money? Status? Progress? And is it worth it? Because time is not just a resource. It's your life. Now, here's something powerful. You can be successful and still have space, but that requires boundaries, discipline, awareness, because without them, time fills itself. Now imagine this. You have success, but you also have time. Time to think, time to connect, time to live. That's real freedom. Now here's the truth. Success without time is just a different kind of limitation, and many people realize that too late. Now pause for a moment. If your life continues at this pace, where will your time go? Think about that, because that answer is your future. Now let's go deeper. Legacy also brings perspective, because when you think long-term, you make different decisions. You become less reactive, less impulsive, more intentional, because now you're not just thinking about now, you're thinking about impact. Now imagine this. Every decision you make is guided by one question. Will this matter in the long run? That question changes everything. Now here's the truth you need to remember. Short-term success impresses people. Long-term impact defines you. So choose wisely. Now let me ask you something. What kind of impact do you want to leave? Not what sounds good, what feels true, because that answer is your direction. Now here's something powerful. You don't need to wait. You can start building your legacy right now, in how you act, in how you speak, in how you live, because legacy is not a future concept. It's a present action. Now let's bring this together. You've seen the dark side of success, the loneliness, the pressure, the emptiness, the identity shifts, but you've also seen the opportunity to build differently, to live differently, to succeed without losing yourself. And now we step into the final chapter, because everything you've heard leads to one question. What will you do with it?